As we travel further west along the beautiful Gower coast, we eventually arrive at the third castle in our study, Pennard Castle. Of all the castles on the Gower Peninsula, Pennard surely has the most idyllic setting, towering above the meandering Pennard Pill and the magnificent Three Cliffs Bay. Like Swansea, and possibly Oystermouth, Pennard Castle began its life as an earthen ringwork. The site chosen would have been, for obvious reasons, particularly intimidating for any attacking force, as the castle is surrounded by a sheer drop on its north and west sides. Unfortunately, nature would prove to be a very sharp double-edged sword for Pennard. Whereas its geographical position would have seemed near impregnable to its builder, Henry de Beaumont, 1st Earl of Warwick, he or anyone else could not have foretold that within 100 years the castle would be overwhelmed by shifting sands transported by heavy winds. The overwhelming of Pennard Castle by sand blow would pass into Gower legend, and a whole host of myths arose concerning the encroachment of the sands. One such tale relates how a bold and ferocious chief, who was possessor of Pennard Castle, captured the hand of a fellow chieftain's daughter after fighting and winning a battle on behalf of his soon-to-be father-in-law. The victorious suitor took his bride to Pennard Castle, where he held a celebration with his followers to commemorate the nuptials. As often happens, the party, wild in its nature, became a drunken and anarchic affair. Later in the evening, one of the sentinels on the walls reported, he was consumed with fear, it should be said, to the castle's warden that he had heard a bewitching, drifting melody from the valley below. The warden, who also claimed to have heard the song, reported back to the chieftain, who himself investigated the interruption, and also heard the tune. Intoxicated by wine, the chief gathered his followers and led an attack on those below who he felt had usurped his celebrations. The chief and his warriors charged down the hill and fell, so the legend goes, upon a party of fairy elves gathered below. The enraged men thrashed and cut with their swords in every direction, all in vain. Suddenly, a low voice was heard from among the elves, which swore vengeance upon the chief for his assault on these innocents. Within an instant, clouds of sand approached the castle, eventually engulfing the whole and leaving it uninhabitable. This, according to the legend, is the reason why Pennard Castle is covered in sand. An outlandish claim? Well, the tradition holds that the sand came from a sand mountain in Ireland. Locals from that area claimed that this sand mountain had vanished from their midst that very night. Because of its fantastic location, Pennard Castle is still a very intriguing fortification. The only entrance ever to have existed to the site is via the D-shaped gate towers, which suggest that this limestone and sandstone castle was indeed built as the Norman English consolidated their grip on Gower. It is easy to gain an impression of what Pennard must have looked like when it was completed originally, because, fortunately, much of the curtain walls survive. These very walls themselves stand on the foundations of the first ringwork castle, and excavations have uncovered these early ringwork walls. In the 1960s, the castle's hall was uncovered, and this find was to prove very interesting. Initially, this 20-meter building consisted of twin storerooms, a large communal living area, and a private retiring room, which was used by the ruling lord. The tower of the hall, visible today in part, abuts the outside of the curtain wall and was designed as such to save internal space. This tower was constructed on the rock base and was probably used for residential purposes. Unlike Swansea and Oystermouth castles, Pennard was to fall into complete disrepair soon after it was built in its contemporary form. Despite its blighted history, Pennard Castle is well worth visiting. Not only are its history and the legends surrounding its unfortunate past fascinating, but the various views afforded by its elevated base are, in many ways, unparalleled in the beauty they present to the visitor.